Hi everyone, I'm Amanda Tran and welcome to Self. I am here to have conversations, share ideas and experiences, to explore the self with the aim of helping people to live happier and healthier lives. Today joining me is a dear friend of mine, Michael Nguyen. Michael, welcome to Self.
It's so good to be here with you, Amanda.
Thanks. So Michael is an English teacher based out of Perth, and we've been friends for 17 years, I want to say.
Pretty much, yeah, since we were teenagers.
Yeah. And I've invited you here today because we've both been on quite an interesting journey over the last couple of years. And interestingly, over the course of our friendship, you know, kind of naturally you grow apart and you kind of come back together, and we've kind of grown up together through church and through a lot of common friendship circles. And we caught up earlier in the year and just found that, hey, we've been on this same journey of exploration, like of exploring ourselves, and through some very similar circumstances. Yeah.
That's right.
And for both of us growing up in immigrant families, we're both Vietnamese, and growing up in Perth under some very similar circumstances. We're both firstborn, the eldest in our family as well. I think we've got some common struggles and some stuff that I guess is familiar, and we've both learned and grown a lot from this year.
I'd say our stories are they're very familiar to the immigrant story, but I think it's kind of like one of those things where you're not really conscious of it until you look back. Like you realize growing up, you're like, oh, I've got all of these experiences that I've had growing up. And then you talk to your friends and people are saying, hang on, that's not what I experienced.
Yeah.
So I guess, for us to sort of dive into that and to now look back retrospectively has been a really self-finding moment. Yeah. It's something that we don't get to do very often in our life, but now that we're here, let's dig into that.
So what have you found when you're talking about these experiences that other people haven't been able to relate to? Are there specific things that come to mind?
Well, yeah, like I think one of the things that I think a lot of immigrant children, especially with parents who are from overseas and don't speak English, for instance, you're forced to be the child in the family, but also the adult at the same time. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but growing up, you would have these opportunities, and I call them opportunities now because at the time they were kind of forced upon you. But now I realized that there were real opportunities to like assume the role of a parent, assume the role of a caregiver, or even assume the role of the little things like translating documents, understanding how the rules work around here, understanding how to make things happen for your family. Because at the end of the day, like, my parents would get like a bank statement and they'd be like, can you help me translate this? Like, I can't read these terms and services. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah.
And so you quickly learn how to do taxes.
Yeah. I remember being like when we had to sign up for dial-up, oh my gosh, and having to get on the phone with customer service. And that was always me. That was my role. Yes. Like my parents would not get on the phone and explain things. I was the person having to call and go through customer support and doing it all. And when you're, I don't know, I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, and you're nervous to speak on the phone as it is to adults and to strangers, and just having to go through that. I love that you said that it's an opportunity, because I think at the time it felt much more like a chore.
Yes.
And something that I definitely didn't want to do.
I remember countless times myself like masquerading as my father on the phone. I don't know if you've ever done that before.
Oh my gosh, yes, yeah. Because obviously their full name, their birthday, all the answers to the secret questions.
So you have to, and they're like, are you sure? You don't sound like
hello, little 10-year-old.
Yeah. But that's what we had to do, it wasn't a situation of like we had a choice. It was like we had to do this in order to keep things functional. And that's like a little micro example, like signing up for internet. But now can you imagine jumping to like other scenarios like purchasing a property and translating that for your parents?
Wow.
Or helping them to start up a business and all of these things, they obviously, they didn't force it upon us. It was more so they almost like required our assistance, or at least that's how I felt growing up. And so that does some really interesting things to you psychologically. I mean, over time, you assume the role of a provider. You assume the role of a caregiver. You assume the burden that people call of responsibility as well. So all of a sudden, you're taking on the parent role and perhaps an adult role way beyond your developmental years. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever experienced that before.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the assumption of responsibility that you're taking on, and I guess it forces you to grow up pretty quickly, right? Because there's this balance of being a child, and for us growing up Vietnamese, that there are cultural implications to being a child.
Yes.
Because there's also this hierarchy that exists in our culture. So you have to have a level of respect. Our parents are definitely above us. They always have the final say. They're always right. And then at the same time, as you said, we're also stepping into this kind of very adult role. And I think that was quite confusing for me growing up. And you're right that there's an ongoing psychological impact. Yeah, because you grow up very quickly, and I don't know, I guess like finding your place in the world is also a bit strange when you're navigating this cross section of cultures, because we both went to school obviously in Perth, and so you're surrounded by Western culture, Aussies, other like kids from immigrant backgrounds and whatnot. Yeah. And you're balancing that with navigating your culture at home.
That's it. And I think the idea of like kids being kids just didn't exist in our family.
No, that's not a Vietnamese thing.
No, it's not actually.
Like that line, that saying is only something I've heard in the West.
Yeah.
And as you said that, the first thing that came to mind for me is I started working when I was 12 years old.
Exactly. Me
too. How old were you? 12?
Yeah, like just crushing boxes, like stacking shelves. Like that's, you got hands, you got feet, you work.
You contribute, right?
Yeah.
Like I started cooking rice and washing dishes. Cooking rice, obviously, because I'm Asian.
Yeah.
I started cooking rice when I was 6.
Yeah.
I was changing my sister's diaper. I was contributing to the household. I was doing all the chores from 6 onwards. And at 12, I was working in my uncle's deli.
Exactly.
And working, I don't know, like 20 hours a week or something. And I know it's funny because when I tell some people that now, people are pretty outraged. They're like, child labor?
That's like forced child labor, what's going on here?
And look, a part of me is like, probably could have been given more of an opportunity to be a kid, and at the same time I'm actually really grateful for it because it has been a great proponent towards my work ethic. And I don't look at any job that's below me whatsoever, and I think that comes from the immigrant story, which is you do whatever you have to do. You hustle, you work hard, and you make something of yourself, whatever that looks like. Like there doesn't have to be a barrier, and if there is one, you navigate your way around it and you make something. And I love that about the immigrant Vietnamese story, because I think most Vietnamese families, at least for sure in our circles, like you can see how families have risen out of that.
Definitely. And it was about rising. Like, I don't think for my family, it wasn't about, we weren't in this mindset of thriving at the time. It was about surviving. It
absolutely.
was always about surviving. And so everything that you did was for the family.
Yeah.
And every action that you took was either preparing you for a future for the family. So, for example, helping out the business or creating an environment for your kids, like babysitting them so your parents can actually work.
Yeah.
So, I watch my friends and they're out there, they're going to footy training, they're going to cricket, and they play all these sports on the weekends. And I'm the one who's like, oh, what did you do on the weekend? Oh, I was at the till.
And studying.
and studying
doing
at
homework.
the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
And but also it was, I am very grateful for it because you
Yeah.
know you get that little, like, I guess, teenager degree that's sort of like thrown into that sort of adult space at a very young age. Now, of course, this isn't unique. Like, you know, millions of people across the world
Yeah.
go through this. But I think it's like a common thread that I've noticed with a lot of immigrant families that come from like refugee backgrounds or just backgrounds where families had to really start from the bottom, had to survive to make it. So I think that creates a bit of a drive
Yeah.
in all of us, you know, because we're constantly, even when we're young, told like everything you do is to make the family better
Yeah.
or to make yourself better. So of course there's this sort of fire or motivation within all of us, and probably it comes from a desire just to like please our parents.
Yeah.
You know, this idea of, oh yes, I'm going to make it in this degree, I'm going to give us a better life, I'm going to make sure that my future isn't like the present that you're putting me through.
Yeah.
You know, so that was quite an interesting sort of reflection.
Yeah, and I guess it's probably not helpful to label things as good and bad, but just to be able to observe and see what we learn from that. Because when I look at that, I think there are a lot of benefits that came from it and perhaps a lot of costs as well. Because on the one hand, I think there is definitely a need for children to be loved and accepted as they are, right? Like, I'm not sure that it's healthy or conducive or effective for children to feel a burden of responsibility. But also at the same time, it's like, well, this is just kind of how it was for us, and you can't change the past. So I think it's a great thing we can look back at that and draw a lot of inspiration and positivity from it. Yeah, but I guess for us, you just had to pull up your pants and,
Exactly,
and go for it and do it.
Yeah, that's it. You know, you pull up your pants, you like button up your shirt, and you just like put on the tie,
And you show up.
show up, and obviously that impacts your career choices. It impacts the way you think. Like, being at a young age, having to know the answers to things that you may not even fully understand creates what I call like the hypothetical mindset. It's like it's a mindset where you feel like you have to have all the answers all the time, and that
resonates with me a lot.
Yeah, you know, it's even if you didn't know, you had to find a way to know.
Yeah.
And even before you could fully understand, you had to act upon the information that you had. So that hypothetical mindset means that you're always constantly trying to find the best thing, the best way. So take, for instance, you know, if someone asked me, oh, where should I go eat? Oh, this is the best place to go eat. You know, oh, where should I stay? This is the best place to stay. And
It's true. Vits do love that though,
Yeah.
don't they?
Yeah.
It's always about having the right answer.
the right answer.
Yeah, which has a profound impact. And I'm sure, and I know this, I guess, from past conversations that we've had before, that's something I guess we both have struggled with, having to get things right all the time.
Yeah.
And I guess when we talk about the influences of our culture, what's really special is that we get to observe and choose what works well for us.
Yeah.
Have you heard like the term third culture, kid?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so that's what we are, right? This third culture, because we have our Western culture that we've grown up in the environment around us, and we have our Vietnamese background, our culture that we grew up with at home, and then we end up as this third culture kid with an amalgamation of both.
Yeah.
And something beautiful there is that we have space to choose, because there's a lot that I value about our Vietnamese culture.
Yes.
There's a lot that I don't.
Yeah.
Honestly, when I look at some things, I'm like, oh, not a fan of that. And it's nice to be able to pick and create your own value system, because we do just otherwise inherit what's given to us and assume that and take it on, sometimes without questioning any of it.
Yeah, that was a very big, almost subconscious part of growing up, is especially growing up in like Asian conservative background, you get given a narrative.
Yeah.
You essentially get given the narrative of, okay, you work hard.
You go to school.
Go to school. You get to university. Make sure that the degree isn't just some like arts degree that's random. It has to generate.
No offense to arts degrees.
No offense, but that's the message that's been told by our families.
Yeah, I mean, there are,
are the,
I would say the accepted professions in kind of an order, but maybe no particular order, is medicine. So you get to be a doctor, a dentist, a pharmacist. If you can't get into med, you can be a pharmacist, and that's acceptable. A lawyer, an engineer, and an accountant.
That's right. Yeah.
Teachers up there though, but I don't know that it's like fully accepted.
It's not.
It's yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's like it's like a job that people see, especially within the Vietnamese community, as it's very different to business. You know, you
got to be making money.
Yeah. You know, you can be a lawyer and own your law firm. You can be a doctor and have a doctor's clinic.
Yes.
You know, you can be an engineer and make a company. You can't be a teacher and own a school. You know, like especially if you work for government.
Right.
So it's you know, there's always that mindset of like the step you take needs to be one step to something bigger.
Yes.
You know, and so we end up being well, at least for me, end up being like a walking contradiction, you know, because of course we want to do these things, but our own personal choices don't quite fit into that narrative.
No, and there's not often space that's given to exploring your own desires. Like the idea of pursuing passion is very foreign and is not encouraged in the Vietnamese community, right? Like that's seen often as a waste of time. That's a hobby. If you've got something you're passionate about, that's a hobby.
Yeah.
You don't go and pursue that as a career. And what you were just saying earlier about having to have all the answers to get things right, I think there's a part of our culture where we are just handed this system and this block.
Yeah. Here's the answer.
Here's the answer, and you're expected to live this kind of life, which means the moment you deviate from it, you're often seen as a failure or a disappointment.
That's right.
And I guess for us, where we've deviated in some way, which we can kind of touch base on.
Let's dive into it.
Yeah, because when we're talking about that system that you're handed, we were saying you contribute to the family. We've got a great collective mindset in the Vietnamese community, and I do love that because you're not just contributing to your own individual growth. It's not just about you, it's about the community. You know, we collectively contribute to all build each other up, which is a great thing. But you work hard, you study hard, you go to uni, you make something of yourself, and you graduate from one of these 6 degrees that's allowed. You get a job. Yeah. Now you're allowed to date.
Yes.
Okay, now you can.
After uni.
After uni. Absolutely not before, and most definitely not during high school before you're 18.
Now, of course, there are exceptions, but there are exceptions with a very sort of like keen, sharp eye from the parents monitoring you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so then you're allowed to date while you're working full time, and the moment you start dating, it's you need to get married and buy a house and have kids.
Yeah, with the first person you dated.
Only date one person and then lock it down, and that's it, and your life is set. Yeah. And it's this desire for safety and for security that our parents didn't have. Like that's where, you know, it doesn't come from a bad place at all. It's not coming from a place of wanting to...
it's not control. No.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's intentional. Yeah. It's not intentional control. I think it comes out in that way often.
Yes.
Because you're not really given freedom to decide otherwise. But it comes from this desire for us to have security and safety, which they didn't have because of the war. Having to flee your home country and come to another, you know, jump on boats, end up in detention centres in random countries, navigating all of this to land in a country where you don't speak the language, where you have no money, no assets, you are starting completely from zero. I understand why the priority there is safety and security. Yes. And the priority for your children is absolutely to be better, to have more, and to have that safety and security that you didn't have. So that's where it comes from. But that also means this laid out life, which you and I very much prescribed to, and we both lived out. Yeah. Right? Like we made it up to a certain point because we were both...
we found the partner.
We found a part. We went to uni.
Yeah.
We studied. You are a teacher. I was a lawyer.
Yeah.
So we did that. We got our jobs, working full time. We were living kind of very like successful lives. We had partners. We got married, and then boom, it changes. Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that when you're given this narrative, and when divorce happens, right, when separation happens. That narrative really crumbles in front of your parents, in front of the community, in front of your siblings, because they've looked up to you as well as the role model. So
and we're also given the pressure of being the role model.
Yes.
And I don't know about you, for me, on my dad's side of the family, I was the first person to get married.
And I was the first person to have a degree, and
so was I. My aunties and uncles, but out of the cousins, I'm the eldest female cousin, and I'm the second eldest cousin. I remember getting phone calls in year 12 being like, you need to get the highest score possible because all your cousins are going to look to you, and you are setting the example.
Yeah.
And then, but you feel that through, like that has a rippling effect through all aspects of your decision making, and absolutely in relationships. Like, you being the eldest, me being the eldest in our immediate families, we were both also first to get married.
That's right.
And then you set the tone, and when it doesn't work, I know I felt like a complete failure.
Oh, definitely. At that moment, it's like you don't just lose the relationship, you lose the narrative. And I think that's the bigger heartbreak. That
the whole worldview that's attached to it, the meaning. The
meaning, the intention, but also the entire future that you'd set out for yourself. Because going back to that hypothetical mindset, you had to have the answers.
Yeah.
And you've realized, like, this was not the answer. This was not, like, what I'm experiencing right now is not what I thought it was be.
It's not how it was supposed to be.
Yeah. And so it's, obviously the opposite to the hypothetical mindset is something that you get this slap in the face. You get this slap in the face moment, and it kind of wakes you up. And I think it's a beautiful slap in the face moment, because if we were going through life, as it were, with these sort of gentle, like, I guess, taps on the head to go this direction, that direction, I don't think we would have ever taken it. I don't think we would have ever woken up from it. So the slap in the face moment introduced into my life through I guess
was it through the separation?
Yeah.
Was that the moment for you?
Yeah,
right.
It was. Made me realize that this entire narrative and the entire way of my thinking was just a pattern that was given to me.
Yeah.
And now I have an opportunity to create something new. Now I have an opportunity to live, think, feel, act, be as the person that I want to be.
Yeah.
That was like a huge moment for me. It was like as if I had been set free from the paradigms of old. I don't know, how do you feel about that?
Yeah. I guess for me, part of the journey started when I started traveling first, because I had this set of beliefs, this set of values, like you, that had been handed down. We are often taught what to think, not how to think, is what I like to say.
Yeah.
And there was always this like inner rebel in me that questioned everything, and I wasn't allowed to question things. I would get shut down when I questioned the why on, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to believe this? Why this? And often it was just, the answer was because that's how it is. And when I started traveling and having great conversations with people from all around the world and other travelers, I think that's when my mind was given the freedom to start thinking and exploring and questioning. When the separation happened for me, I guess there was a big dissolution of a certain narrative, because before that, even though I was doing and living a life that was quite different, being a traveler and whatnot, there was still one key thing that was linking me back in, and that was we were still married. We still, that there was that core safety and security in my husband at the time. Breaking away from that was extremely isolating, And it dissolved everything. And I remember thinking, I've never felt like this much of a failure in my life. And it felt so lonely. And the other layer to that, which we haven't gone into, is we both come from Christian backgrounds as well.
So there's the whole spiritual side of things that we it's like the weight of culture, it's the weight of self and parents, and then it's also the weight of, I guess, the ideology that we grew up with.
Yeah. And you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure it's the same for both of us, is we obviously looked at marriage as this is it for life. Like, this is one person that I'm choosing for life. And absolutely, that was my intention. And to then not end up there, to end up separating, I mean, that rocks. As you said, if you've got these 3 pillars that make up your identity and that dissolves, what's left? Yeah,
exactly it. And I kind of have this image in my head that I was in this sort of stadium and all the lights just like turned off, like boom.
Oh,
and now,
dark.
It's dark.
Literally.
Yeah, literally dark, and now you're sitting there, you're like feeling around in the darkness, and there's like a light switch somewhere, that there's an exit somewhere, but everything has just been turned off for you. So, a part of me is for the past year going in the dark, blindly looking around, but knowing, and I guess at the end of the day, realizing that perhaps the light that you need to get out of there wasn't the one that's been shone upon you, but it's like it's in you, like it's something that you can pull out, like you've got your own light with you. So that's us finding our own way, because we've been given all of these sort of details and shown the way the whole time. Like, it's all been fully lit for us, but once it's all taken away, now you have to find it yourself.
Which is a beautiful thing. When we talk about opportunity, I think it's an incredible gift that comes out of something very painful to be able to explore who you are as an individual and no longer have to just take this set that's been handed to you, and then you get to question and you get to explore, I guess, what life means, what identity means, what you believe, what you want to believe, how you want to live your life.
Yeah. I think for us, or at least for myself, the slap in the face moment made me start to think antithetically. So that's the opposite to hypothetical thinking is antithetical thinking. So having this sort of antithetical mindset, because everything that we know is our hypo.
Okay.
Right? Everything that we get given to us that's unfamiliar, that's new, that's different is our anti. It's that antithetical mindset that I've started to adopt in my life.
Can you give me an example?
So take, for instance, if you choose the exact same meal every single day, then your experience of life will be the exact same 4 meals.
Okay.
So that's just a very simple one. Why do we have these sort of patterns and habits that we return to? What is the merit of exploring another option? What is the merit of creating a different time of eating, a different place of eating, a different way of eating? And that's just a very simple example. But now apply this concept to every single thing in your life, and you start to realize that for once in your life, the narrative or the hypothetical mindset that you've been given as a child was something that was pre-written for you. But imagine now being antithetical, and you write yourself. You write what you want to do. You write how you want to be. You write how you want to show up every single day. And that for me was like the biggest freeing moment. And also recognizing as well, and I think this was something that was a detriment but a blessing at the same time, because we were so hypothetical. That made us successful. That made us great in what we were doing. But it comes
successful by one measure.
By one measure, yes, but limited in another. So take, for instance, in the very tricky realm of relationships, right? It's the thing that probably made our partners admire us, but it's also the things that make us very rigid in a way to not be
extremely.
Yeah. And so that rigidity is something that now, when you think antithetically, enables you to be successful, or enables you to be flexible, enables you to be open-minded enough to accept the world as it is, not as the narrative or the greatest or the best or the worst, but you just accept things as they are. And I think that for me was a very releasing moment.
Yeah. So tell me more about this journey for you after the separation. So you have this wake up moment, slap in the face moment, as you describe it. And then if you experience what I experienced, there's a period where I felt very lonely and very low because there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of unknown. You're breaking out of this narrative for the first time.
That's right.
What was that period like for you?
So there's something called the paradox of change. And the paradox of change is that the bigger the change you have in your life, or the bigger change that's been put onto your life, the deeper and harder your mind, your body will try to cling back to the past narrative.
Yeah.
So
it's looking for safety
it's
when there's
looking.
when there's something that is very significant in terms of change. You want everything else to stay the same. We can't really handle every aspect of our life changing simultaneously.
Correct.
Just like your brain freaks out because it wants to be safe. It wants the known.
That's right. Yeah. So, you know, when we're operating in this sort of unknown space, of course, it's trying to claw back to the old paradigms. It's the way that we think. It's the, like, if you think that there is a correlation between, you know, our thoughts and our feelings and our actions and our identity, then all of that is what we have as familiar to us. So we're reaching back to our familiar. And that manifests in itself in little things that we do in our life. And we're trying to take, for instance, you know, after the separation, we're trying to recreate those past moments, or we're trying to recreate the connection, or we're trying to recreate something. But there was a moment where if you let go and move forward, then you start to step into this unknown. And the unknown is really scary. So every day as you move forward, you know, now we're in the unknown. You know, and the unknown every single day is saying, go back to the known. But you know that you can't go back to the known.
Yeah.
You cannot. It's impossible. In actual fact, to try and force it would probably take you further away from it. And so the only thing that you can do is step into that unknown space. And in this case here, I had to ask myself, you know, what are the types of feelings? What are the types of characteristics? What are the parts, the emotions, the parts of my identity that I want to carry forward into the unknown? Am I still going to be the exact same person as I was back then that got me into this situation in the first place? Or do I step forward with a new paradigm, a new way of thinking? And of course, that's something that's very powerful, because I think a lot of people, like, and including myself, obviously, we wake up every single day with a certain set of thoughts, a certain set of actions, a certain set of emotions. And a part of our growing up survival mindset, right, was to either stick to a safe narrative, or in many cases, think of like the worst case scenarios, the negative thoughts, so that we could at least protect ourselves from that. Like, you know, if you think in the most negative ways, like, oh, don't do this because you'll get into danger. You know, don't do that path because it's not safe. Don't purchase that because it's not fiscally responsible, you know, or don't go there because it's not a part of your pathway. You know, that's protection, you know, from our old paradigm. But what that does is it if we wake up with those thoughts every single day, then we have those same patterns occurring every single day. Nothing changes. So to start a new day, to start a new life, a new journey, I had to adopt the antithetical mindset, which was, what are the merits of every other thing that I've missed out in my life? Which is hard, because obviously, you know, you don't want to go all the way into something, but at least just explore the opportunity.
Just being open to something new.
That's right.
Which is difficult when you have come from a very rigid, set way of being, which is, I think, something you and I were both accustomed to.
That's right.
It was very unfamiliar for me. I struggled a lot with, I guess, reaching out and being honest with my support network. Because for me, this happened just before COVID. And I was, you know, we were alone, we were overseas. Our core support network really didn't actually know in the last 6 months before the separation, what was going on for us. And I remember for months after, just navigating this space of I have no idea who I am outside of this. And it's uncomfortable being in the unknown. And yes, there's so much growth to be had, and obviously retrospectively you can see all of these things as opportunities, but in the moment when you're living through it, it's painful. Yeah, it's a lonely and a very painful space. And the only thing you can do, because what I felt was just life unraveling and having no control over anything, which is kind of the opposite of what we're accustomed, the way that in which we're accustomed to living. Because as we said, you're given this set of beliefs. There's a lot of control involved. You know, you work hard so that you achieve. It's a lot of what you're able to do. And in this moment, I remember for those few months going, like, what is life anymore? Like, everything's just gone to shit, and not having control over anything, not feeling incredibly alone through it all, and then taking that as an opportunity to go, okay, well, what do I have control over? And it's me. It's like my response to this. How am I going to learn, and how am I going to grow from this? And I guess when you hit any form of rock bottom, perhaps that is the only glimpse of light and hope that you can cling on to, which is I still have power and autonomy and control over me. Even if all these circumstances, no matter what's going on, whether it's not about fault or anything, it's just this is life as it is, and we have to accept it. But in that acceptance, it's what can I do? How do I come out of this?
There's so many, I mean, just hearing that, there's so much that I got from that. Like, you were talking about control, and I think what happens in those sort of like traumatic moments, or those moments that we go through where things are taken away from us, is we go through something called the disguises of desire.
I love these phrases that I don't know if you've come up with them or you've heard of them, but I'm learning a lot. This antithetical mindset. And what was this one again?
So disguises of desire.
Disguises of desire.
So like, you know, everything that your mind is like reaching for is based upon this desire, right? Like, and so take for instance, you send a text to someone, right? You send a text to someone hoping that you get a reply back. You send a text to let's say the ex or whoever else, right? Within that is a disguise or a desire for maybe certainty, maybe control, maybe affirmation, maybe acknowledgement, maybe a sense of like your mirrored self. So you're projecting yourself out there to feel accepted. So one of the things that I was sort of brought into the space of understanding was be conscious of these disguises of desire. Like, ask yourself, why are we doing this? You know, as we step into the unknown and we start to repeat these old patterns, like, because it's clawing us back, why are we doing this old pattern? So, you know, why am I trying to do this? And then you start recognizing the disguises of desire. And so when you're conscious in that moment, you can actually shift it and reframe it, which is exactly what you said. You go, hang on, I'm seeking control in a situation or circumstance outside of myself. I'm seeking affirmation. I'm seeking acknowledgement from a person externally to me. So reframe, right? Reframe is, in this situation or in this moment, do I need to control someone else? No, I can control myself.
Well, it's not even do I need to, like, do I have control over someone else?
Yeah,
no.
we know. Just by default, of course not. You know, where should I be getting my acknowledgement from? Is it from another person? Is it from my past? Is it from the people that I knew that would affirm me? Or was it something that was missing inside of me? Maybe my inner child yearning to be acknowledged by myself. So that reframe. All of these disguised desires are actually desires that we have for ourselves, but we haven't given ourselves the opportunity to actually just feed ourselves from that. We've been seeking, or at least I have in my past, seeking it from the external environment, the external
100%.
situation, the external story. So going through that and reframing is such a huge thing, you know, like, and there are so many like my method for reframing. So we call it auto-suggestion. I don't know if you've heard of that concept before.
No.
Yeah, so like, whenever you have like an idea or something, let's say you're struggling with a thought,
Yeah.
right? You're struggling with a negative emotion in your life. Firstly, you don't just block that negative emotion. You deeply feel it. You deeply acknowledge it and understand it. But at some point, it has to go somewhere.
Yes.
So the method that I've used is auto-suggestion, which is you reframe it. So going back, recognizing the disguises of desire that you go through, and then asking yourself, what could you do instead? What is the best version of yourself going to think and feel? Like essentially taking what was a negative thought, shifting the energy into a positive outcome or a positive direction. So take, for instance, when after the break, you feel an immense sense of loneliness, as you mentioned, right? So in that moment, I told myself, loneliness, that has some real negative connotations to it. It's this feeling of, again, being in a dark stadium, right? You feel like you're the only person. So for me, the reframe for that was let's turn loneliness into solitude. Now solitude becomes a beautiful thing. Solitude is intentional.
Yeah.
Solitude is a moment where your mind, your body, yourself is yearning to be intimate with
yourself.
With yourself.
Yeah, a moment of recovery, of rest, of reflection, introspection.
Yes.
There's so much beauty that comes out of solitude.
Yeah, that's it. So that becomes a part of like this sort of beautiful, almost like a beautiful definition of what you are going through, because we understand our lives through meaning.
Yeah.
Right. So when we attach meaning to our situation or circumstance, because we can go through the exact same situation or circumstance. I'm sitting alone in a room, and my old self will be saying, I'm alone, I'm empty,
I'm lonely. Right.
This sucks.
Yeah.
Right. But then the reframe tells me this is a moment of solitude. This is a moment for me. Like I'm not being left. I'm being the person who is finding me.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you can just leave it there and think that, but it's not powerful enough. Auto-suggestion happens when you record it. So you actually like take out your voice recording device or your phone, you record it, and then whenever you feel that emotion coming, that negative emotion, you play the voice recording of yourself to yourself. So that way, that becomes almost like your own coach that pulls you out of that moment. But it also rewrites your subconscious thinking, because inevitably what happens is the more that you play that auto-suggestion, it becomes the default pathway to your new thinking.
Right.
So, we've got the paradox of change, which is you're in this new environment and your mind is constantly trying to pull you back to the old way of thinking. This sucks, I'm alone. But we have to put in a very consistent and strong effort to pull ourselves out of that. And that does require an actual physical thing to pull us out. Now, of course, we're not going to always have our friend or our family to be on our shoulder or to hug us and hold us and say, hey, it's going to be okay, right? We're not going to have the coach going, yeah, you can do this, Michael, right? So all we have is ourself. And so auto-suggestion for me was like just one way that you can reprogram your mind. And it's you can do this for anything in your life. Obviously, any sort of negative emotion, any sort of like any mindset. Like, I'll give you an example. Even like this year, rain. A lot of people really like. I'd say 99% of the population avoid rain, right?
Not the farmers. The farmers love rain.
They love rain. Yeah. But I guess whenever I see rain now, it's like if it's raining, that's beautiful. I want to walk through that. I want to experience that. That's like a beautiful thing, because that's like a paradigm shift. It's like for me, like what I normally perceived as negative, right? Oh, rain, this sucks. Or like, I don't want to get wet, is now, hey, this is a welcome moment. So it can really change everything within your life and how you perceive things.
Yeah, it sounds like it's shifted your outlook on things. I mean, it's a mindset, it's an approach to life and to being.
Yeah, definitely. Just another thing that sort of comes to mind is, so what happens now is, imagine we can start to write our future. Imagine if we can start to write our lives, not by the patterns of the past, but by the design of what we want for ourselves for the future. So this kind of moves into sort of like a more metaphysical sort of thinking space now. Hope you can handle this, but it's like
let's go. I'm here for the ride.
You know, like, I don't know if you've believed in the concept of like just visualizations.
Oh, absolutely. Super powerful tool. We use it in freediving. I mean, you can use it in any aspect of life, but there's a lot of science to back how powerful visualization is. They've done it with like strength training, you know, just visualizing lifting your finger, for example, or being, you know, squeezing something versus someone actually physically doing it and then comparing it. And you've seen, I don't know if you know this study. I can't remember. I could be botching the entire study. But anyway, I think they found really great results from the people who just visualized it. But yes, incredible tool. I'm all for it.
Yeah. So like visualization is, for me at least, it's not just like a haphazard, like, oh, you imagine your future, you know, like,
no.
there's a real intentional moment where you take a look at like a negative scenario or perhaps a moment in your day where you felt negativity or where you felt something that was a little bit off, and you go back and you visualize, and you do this every morning. You visualize what the best version of yourself would do in that moment. You start to become conscious. You start to become conscious of what you were doing in the past that got you to that. You know, like, I'll give you an example. Let's say like I walk into a store and I buy something that like I didn't end up enjoying or didn't end up liking. So imagine me replaying that. Okay, what made me walk into that store? What made me pick that item? What made me pull towards buying that particular thing? What then made me feel like, oh, this wasn't exactly what I wanted at the end of the day? You know, so, and then you go back and you replay those, and now you start to become conscious of all the elements and all the forces within your life that are making you do your actions. And so the new way of thinking, this sort of antithetical mindset, is you start to visualize, okay, what would I have done if I were to think a more open-minded way or a different way? And you start to visualize the best version of yourself doing that. And that becomes now not you acting based upon your past paradigms and programming, but you are now acting based upon the best version of an imagined or visual self. So now your future is not determined by your past, but it's determined by your present, like almost conscious understanding of who you are and who you can become.
Very much in alignment with your higher self.
Yeah.
Like, you know, because we are dictated by often, or we allow our past to consume us, to have control. You know, you spoke about these patterns that are repeated, and the only way to break patterns is to become conscious and to become aware of it.
Yeah.
And then to actively now repeat new behaviors to rewire the brain and to change that. You don't break a pattern once and then the pattern's broken.
No, that's it.
Right? It's like developing any habit.
Yeah.
It's consistency. It's repetitiveness. It's that discipline of doing it over and over and over again.
And even when you stuff up, you get back to it.
Yeah.
You know, and of course recognizing, but I always find like the stuff up moments to be even like, it's almost like a gold field of like data. You know, you're looking at yourself and you go, oh, okay, I messed up again. What can I learn from that moment? So, you know, even in those moments, you kind of almost welcomed that you kind of messed it up a bit. So now the gravity and the weight of messing up life or what you perceive to be a negative situation has another meaning and purpose to it, which is that it's a part of that journey of you becoming. So it's, I mean, there's so many little things that we do throughout the day that we are not conscious of. And I believe that as we start to really deeply think about our personality and the patterns of either speech or movement or expression or even our body, you know, how we articulate ourselves, like physically, our physiology, we're moving towards, like you said, that higher self. It's not something that comes naturally to any of us because we weren't taught this. We were taught this is how you are supposed to be. Or sometimes we just haphazardly fall into it.
Yeah.
But now that the slap in the face moment happens, you ask yourself, what were the patterns that got me here? And now you realize that the patterns that move you forward can never be those ones ever again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they don't have to be.
They don't have to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes they'll repeat themselves, but at least you have a consciousness of it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of the point of it all, right? Is just to be able to live a bit more consciously, a bit more intentionally. I even found coming out of the separation and then coming into a new relationship, recognizing patterns that I'd never even known about before that came forth.
Absolutely.
Like, what is going on? Who is this person that I thought an old version of myself that I thought wasn't around anymore? Like, hey, crazy Amanda, she's back. No, it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't bad. I don't know. But it's being aware. Being aware of who you are and how you're being. And I think that's the best thing that we can take from all of these, so, these situations and these things that happen in life, and what we perceive as failures is learning about yourself from them.
And actually, like, when you start to learn, or when you start to be aware, you start to realize that you don't have to be any of these things.
No, you don't.
You can just shift into nothingness.
Yeah, easier said than done. I think a lot of patterns dictate the immediate reaction. Yeah. But the consciousness and the intention comes in the response, because they're two very different things.
Yes.
The reaction is the immediate that comes from the old paradigm, the old way of being, patterns that have been programmed in us, more of that subconscious. The old brain, I think they like to describe it, right? And then the power, the control that we have comes in our response that comes after. This is where we get to shine light on that and go, hold on a second, that's actually not how I want to show up anymore. I don't like this pattern. I don't like how I am in this. I don't like my behavior in this, and now I'm going to bring some consciousness, some awareness to this and shift my behavior. And I mean, relationships have this incredible way of holding up a mirror to us, because they show you and they reflect everything back to you. All of your childhood wounds, any old patterns, behaviors, because you are in the most vulnerable state when you're in a romantic relationship with someone. You open yourself completely. So of course, these things you don't hide. And that is in itself the perfect opportunity for you to see yourself truly. And when you talk about that disguise of desire, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
What I was hearing there was really being honest with yourself. I think we live in denial of what the truth is within us. Like, if you can be honest about what your true desires are without masking it as something heroic or whatever, pretending that it's about another person, really being truthful about stuff deep down, then you get to tackle it. Then you can come into alignment with your higher self.
Yeah. I love what you said about, relationships being a mirror. And, as we're sitting here, I mean, the listeners can't see this, but there's this beaming light shining upon us.
Yeah.
And I think very similarly, relationships kind of shine a light on us.
Oh, totally.
But every single time there's a light shone upon you, there's a shadow. And it reveals that shadow self.
Yes.
So,
great imagery.
Yeah. There's, obviously you have you. It shows you, but it does show you your shadow as well. And that shadow that's being projected, you can't avoid it. It sticks with you.
Yeah.
So the only thing you can do is turn towards it and view it for what it is, and understand, hey, this is still me. But I'm going to now understand this. I'm going to work with this, and I can move myself. I can move my body. I can move the way I stand in position to the light, so that way I can change that shadow. So some of the things like that have been revealed to me is, I don't know if you understand, like, attachment styles.
Yeah.
Big time, right? So, I mean, there's just the basic attachment styles. Is you've got your sort of anxious attachment style, avoidant, and then in the middle there's that secure. So, I started to realize that within different relationships and different dynamics, I had different attachment styles. But the predominant pattern that existed within those was the anxious attachment style.
Yeah, me too.
Now, that light shining upon me kind of revealed that. But then me understanding, at least, this was my old way of thinking, this is my past self. What does my new self want to be? How do I shift myself from the anxious attachment style, or for anyone listening, the avoidant attachment style, into secure, right? It's being in that moment, and then we ask ourselves, okay, these are the patterns. These are the things that I'm conscious of that make me anxious. Like, for example, waiting for the other person, right? Or wondering, or having that, what I call stinking thinking, you know, where you wonder and you think the most negative things about what that person might be doing, or where they are, or how they're functioning whilst you're sitting here, right? And so going through the reframing is a part of shifting myself from that anxious attachment style towards the secure.
Yeah.
And then visualizing yourself. Oh, I don't see myself as the anxious person, but I visualize myself as the secure person. What would the secure Michael do in this circumstance?
Yeah.
Now, of course, all of this is a lot easier said than done, because at the same time you're fighting that paradox of change.
Yeah.
You know, the bigger the change that you have to go through, the more your body will claw and resist and try to pull you back to the stinking thinking, the negativity, the anxiety.
Yeah.
So it's this constant battle, but that I would have never been able to go through that transition or change without recognizing the light that would expose that shadow. Would show that shadow.
Yeah, and that's always, having that light shining on you is also an opportunity to explore the roots of all of this, to go deep within. I think that's where the work begins, is recognizing that impact on someone else, recognizing the way in which behavior plays out, but also the root of that behavior.
Yeah.
You know, and something I learned is ultimately it all comes down to unmet needs, expectations, desires within myself. And I think the greatest lesson in the past couple of years coming out of that separation, out of even the relationship after that, was I'm the one who's here for me. Like, I am actually enough for me. And one of the hardest truths for me to accept was, looking back at everything, was a lot of my behavior and my desire for relationship came from a place of lacking.
Yeah.
It was just this yearning to be loved, and to be loved externally without first being able to give that to myself.
It's, you know, going back to our sort of immigrant story, a lot of us growing up yearned for that acknowledgement. But at the same time, I don't know how you felt growing up, but a lot of immigrant families and parents, because they're working all the time, really leave the students, not the students, the child, you know, the child, to be independent. Yeah. Now, we see that as independence, and we see that as a beautiful thing, but for children, that's also a form of abandonment as well.
Yeah, there's an inherent need for unconditional love and acceptance.
Yeah. So obviously that manifests itself within our adult self, you know, looking for the relationship to heal the abandonment wounds of our past.
Yeah, and that's what we do. We project our wounds onto another person to heal. We give that responsibility to the relationship, which is not the role of a relationship, right? The role of a relationship, the role of your partner is not to heal you. That is our responsibility to heal ourselves. Yeah. And that was definitely, I mean, it sounds like that was the case for you as well, but that was such a big eye-opener for me, that I was coming with my wounds and going, you need to heal me and fix me, instead of going, I can, not only that I need to, but that I can, and I have the power to heal myself. Yeah,
that's it. And so all of a sudden you start to realize, and we'll sort of come full circle here, is that the relationship and its separation was the biggest gift. Like, you know, you can look back and you go, if I could redo it all over again, would I want this to have, you know, gone a different way? I think no. You know, we look back and we go, yep, I 100% would go through all of the raw pain and everything to be where I am now. Yeah. Because where I am now is someone who has those wounds, but at least I'm the one taking care of them.
Yeah. How beautiful.
Yeah.
And and I think we can be both grateful for these painful experiences, and to acknowledge how deeply they affected us and wounded us. So, you know, there was a lot of pain in that, but there's something, as you said, beautiful that has come out of that circumstance and that situation.
Absolutely. Like, I think if there's anything that anyone who's sort of going through this sort of deep situation is always understand, this is what kind of got me through, was to understand that the other side is beautiful. So, you know, like, I imagine after all of these situations, a million beautiful things have happened.
Yeah.
You know, like...
there have been so many lessons, even, in itself for me, reflecting on how I behaved, how I reacted through all of it, how I could have better shown up. You know, this question of the best version of Amanda, what would she have done? And there are definitely things that, I don't know if like regret's the right word, but I think the way that I showed up, I could have done better kind of towards the end of my marriage. And that's a great thing to learn from. You know, there's no point in hoping for a better past. It's not about changing the circumstances that have gotten us here. But I think looking back and going, I could have shown up a bit better. If this were to happen again, you know, this is something that I can learn from and grow from. Yeah.
I guess, you know, that knowledge without the negative emotion attached to it, but now the appreciation of it, like knowledge with a sense of gratitude is almost like wisdom. You know, like you're not looking back and you're going, oh, I sucked at this and I feel horrible about it. No, that's just feeling the emotion of the moment, right? That's living in the past. But when you go back to the past and be reflective of it, understand how you acted, how you showed up, and you're observing it now, that's a wisdom that we carry with us forwards. It's the greatest lesson that we can have is looking at that and realizing that how we move going forward, like these future relationships, the people that we bring into our lives and everything else, at least they're getting the better version of us. Like,
also that we get the better version of us.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I love that. I mean, if there is anything else, at the end of the day, we have the best version of ourselves day by day.
To be with. Yeah. Oh.
Love it.
Love it. That's beautiful. Thanks, Michael.
It's all right.
I mean, I think that's a great place to end our chat today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
I'm really grateful that you were willing to share your journey, and there's so much value in it, and I'm deeply grateful for our friendship as well, and I'm so glad that this year we've been able to reconnect, and even though it was bonding over something that was quite painful for both of us, that us, I guess, on our journeys, we've been able to support each other. So thank you for being in my life as well.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you for being here, and obviously making all of this more than just crap that we go through in life. It's there's a greater meaning to all of this, and
yeah, I hope so.
There definitely is, and obviously what we do is just one more lesson every single day. So let's keep doing it.
Yeah, and living with the best versions of ourselves, happy and healthier lives. That's what it's about.
I love it.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I release episodes every Thursday. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at self_podcast, and you can follow me at Amanda Letran. That's Letran. Thank you to Michael again. Thank you guys so much for watching or for listening. I will see you next Thursday. Bye.